What is up? Today was a crazy day in the NBA. We had a ton of breaking news. Two star players out indefinitely, two coaches fired, a front office shakeup, a rookie of the year announcement. Every time it seemed like things were calming down, another breaking news story popped up. So we want to jump on here and discuss it all. I'm joined by Spencer Davies and Ethan Fuller. We write at basketballnews.com. And I will say, if you go to basketballnews.com, we have tons of coverage right now of each of these stories, but we wanted to discuss each of these because it's kind of crazy. Let's start with the star players, the all NBA guys that are going to be out indefinitely for different reasons. You have Kawhi Leonard has an ACL injury, or it's feared to be an ACL injury. It seems like his status in this series, not even just tonight, in the series, is in doubt. And depending on the severity, he could be out even longer. And then you also have Chris Paul, who's out due to COVID, tested positive for COVID, was reportedly vaccinated. So hopefully he can come back sooner than later. But Spencer, what are your thoughts on these two injuries and kind of, or the health situations and what it means for these teams?
Well, first off, it just sucks. It just sucks because these are, the leaders of both of their teams, but particularly with this Phoenix Suns group, just being led by Chris Paul, the way that he's really kind of, turned the clock back a little bit, been rejuvenated, even more so than last year with Oklahoma City, just the way that he's been playing over the last few games. We saw him have the shoulder injury in that Lakers game, and we all thought it was happening again, that Chris was going to be down and out again. But stuck with it, played through, and wasn't quite himself much in that Lakers series. But then you saw him pick it back up, and as soon as he did that, and the way that he played against the Nuggets, and I mean, you saw the way that he ended that series, and the way that his leadership is rubbing off on guys like Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges. Jay Crowder is also one of those veterans that's been huge for them. But just as a cohesive unit, they've been so in tune with each other. So something like this to come up, and, I guess it's, it could be worse that it could be in the middle of a series that this news comes out. You said it already that we don't know the length of how long he'll be out. You said that he was reportedly vaccinated, so I don't know what the protocols are in that respect, and how many negative tests he has to have in a certain amount of time. But certainly you would see him missing a couple games, and that just crushes the spirit of Phoenix as a whole. And it's sad because they're really we're clicking on all cylinders, and they're waiting as the Clippers and Jazz are emerging in battle right now. So it's just it's a terrible thing.
It's unfortunate too, just because I think the story of this postseason is the injuries to all these star players. It seems like every team has been impacted by some kind of injury. We've had, I think there was a report earlier or a stat earlier that 8 All-Stars have missed at least one game, which is an NBA record. That could eventually be 9 if Chris Paul does miss a game. So the number of players that have been missing is just ridiculous. And part of that, I think, is the shortened offseason, the condensed schedule as well. We did an article, I talked to a number of players throughout the year about just how difficult it was playing with a condensed schedule, and the fact that there's so many games and so few nights, and so few practices, and just the grind it takes on these guys' body. And it's tough for these guys. So you had LeBron James today tweeting a bunch about it, kind of reacting, saying, we knew this was going to happen. I spoke out. They didn't listen. So players are certainly frustrated with the injuries, and I think they feel like it was preventable. So I get the frustration. Ethan, what are your thoughts on the injuries we've seen this postseason, and also the Chris Paul, Kawhi Leonard news?
Yeah, I mean, the injury situation specifically, not even talking about the games missed, even the players that have had to play through injuries, like we saw James Harden very recently play 46 minutes, but it was a struggle for him, even just kind of getting up and down the court and driving like he usually can. It was a struggle for him because he's playing through an injury. Donovan Mitchell, similar situation, playing through an injury. And it's that type of situation because of all this urgency that comes with being in the postseason. So you can't really get out of it in that situation. So it's been really difficult, and that was the biggest takeaway for me in the whole Kawhi Leonard situation, is that if this is another potentially really long-term injury, you never know with an ACL and what that entails. That's devastating as one of the best players in basketball. And it only adds to this case that LeBron made, that you talked about in the article you wrote, that a number of players have made, that the offseason really was too short, and you're adding another shortened offseason next year on top of an 82-game regular season. It's kind of a scary foreshadowing picture, just that this might not go away anytime soon based on what the calendar's like.
Yeah, we did an article where we kind of all reacted to it, and you brought up a good point. Next year's offseason is supposed to be 18 days longer, I think. So, I mean, yeah, we have a similar offseason coming. Next
couple
year,
weeks, guys.
yeah. Fortunately, next year you won't have the condensed schedule. It'll be a regular 82 game schedule. So, I mean, I think it does say the NBA probably feels like it's more so the condensed schedule than it is the shortened offseason. But who knows? We really don't know. I know a lot of trainers and team employees were kind of concerned about having another shortened offseason too. So yeah, it does lead to some long-term questions for sure. I guess we'll also talk about some of the other news that happened today. Donnie Nelson, Scott Brooks, Stan Van Gundy, are out of jobs. There you had LaMelo Ball winning Rookie of the Year, but I do want to stay on Kawhi and Chris Paul really quick here. With the Chris Paul news, that was the most shocking to me because it felt like we hadn't really seen COVID impacting this postseason too much. We saw during the regular season there were a ton of players missing time with the health and safety protocols and positive tests and things like that. But once the playoffs started, we really hadn't seen that a whole lot. We were kind of fortunate, and for whatever reason, I guess probably because guys were getting vaccinated, and they had a whole year to kind of get used to the protocols and figure things out. We really hadn't seen it. Now, for this Suns team, I feel so bad for them, and for Chris Paul, obviously. Paul, it feels like he has the worst injury or health luck come postseason time, and it's awful for him. And then for the Suns team, they were rolling. People were starting to look at them as a legitimate contender or a favorite to win it all, and then this happened. So I will say it seems like the reports are indicating that Paul will only miss 1 or 2 games tops, assuming he doesn't have crazy symptoms and things like that. But it's just really unfortunate for this team. And then Kawhi, that situation for me, what I'm monitoring is how long could he be out? If we're talking about an ACL injury, we don't know the severity, but if we're talking a serious ACL injury, that could be a significant amount of time that even impacts next season too. So it's just the thing that stood out to me about today was that none of the news was happy or fun. It was all like negative news after negative news. You had firings, you had front office shakeup, you had these significant injuries, like except for LaMelo winning Rookie of the Year, everything was just like you get you see the alert, you get the headline, and you're just like, oh, that sucks, over and over again all day long. So it was a rough day. Spencer, what were your thoughts on some of the other stories that broke today?
Well, I just wanted to mention too, I saw a tweet at our account about that article that we put where we rounded up all of the news and reacted to it. And someone said, I was just on an airplane. I had to pick up my jaw from the floor when I read all of this stuff when I got off of the plane. So it's just like one of those things that if you were falling asleep or if you were napping or something like that, and you just wake up and boom, hits you right in the face. But it's just, again, it's just a crappy way and crappy day, honestly, of all of this stuff happening, people losing their jobs, being the head coaches, obviously Donnie Nelson, you just mentioned, out with the Mavericks. It's just all around not fun, but I did want to make a point too on the injury front. There are like case by case basis where you could go and look at, okay, Kyrie Irving landed on someone's ankle. That's not really related to, the wear and tear portion, but to LeBron's point, the tissue injuries and the soft tissue and it seems like there's a lot of non-contact this year. And those are the ones that you're concerned about because you guys just mentioned it, the long-term impact that comes from it. You're looking at, the rehab process, and you're looking at, how they're able to bounce back. Not everyone can be KD and come back and put up 49, 17, and 10 off of an Achilles injury. That's just superhuman. So like for these guys, and especially for those that are, starting to get up there in age towards their 30s, that's where it gets a little bit hairy for me, as far as their outlook goes for the future of their careers. But it's just, again, it's just a bad day. Bad days, best way to put it.
Now, we also had several firings. We mentioned Stan Van Gundy, Scott Brooks, Donnie Nelson. I want to start with Donnie Nelson because it was kind of the big story in the NBA this week, the Dallas Mavericks story that we saw in The Athletic about Bob Voulgaris apparently being like a shadow GM and having all this power. And it seemed like he had rubbed some people in the front office the wrong way. There were the reports that Luka Doncic was frustrated with him and some of the things that he had done. So the timing was interesting. I know Tim McMahon from ESPN came out and reported that the decision was made on Sunday, so that was before the article had dropped. So I think they wanted to be very clear that this wasn't in response to the article, because I think initially when I saw the news, and I think I saw this a lot of my timeline too, this story breaks, and everyone's first thought is, oh, Donnie Nelson must have been involved in the article and leaking things, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he was the source. So I think that's where people's mind initially went. So for them to come out and say, no, this was decided on Sunday, it kind of clears that up a little bit and clears the air a bit, because I think that was the initial assumption. But it's a crazy situation because there was a lot of talk about what this Mavs team is going to do. You have to surround Luka with talent. Obviously, he's still very young, but he's one of the best players in the NBA, and you want to make sure he stays in Dallas and is happy long term. So there was already this pressure on Dallas, and people were kind of watching to see what they would do. What's going to happen with Porzingis? What kind of moves are they going to make to put talent around him? Now, when you throw in this aspect of it, that, you know, there were reports that, oh, is Rick Carlisle potentially on the hot seat? And Mark Cuban denied that, pushed back on that. Now you have Donnie Nelson the way out. After 23 years of the organization, it was surprising because of how long he was there. And they didn't bring someone else in to work with Donnie. They got rid of Donnie. And there was the report that, I think the language they used was that they mutually parted ways and they decided to move on. So we'll see kind of what happens from here. I know there was some conflicting information about whether Vulgaris was still going to be involved. I think some people were reporting that he was also going to be on the way out. Others were saying, no, he's likely going to stay. But very interesting. I think on my podcast yesterday, I had Jackson Frank on, and we talked about kind of what was going to happen with the Mavericks. And the thought was, after reading the Athletic article, oh, it's going to be, you know, his contract, Bob's contract was expiring anyway. They probably just won't renew it, and then we'll see what happens. This is a total shift from that. Now they're getting rid of Donnie Nelson. Does Bob have even more power now? Is he going from the shadow GM to the actual GM? It's just a crazy situation. Spencer, what were your thoughts on the Mavs' decision to get rid of Donnie Nelson?
Well, the first thing I thought of was, the next GM is going to have the responsibility of signing Luka Doncic to that Supermax contract, and then immediately making some moves just to, like you said, supplement some talent around him. Find someone who's more of maybe someone that can get their own shot a little bit better. I know that Tim Hardaway Jr. did his darndest to do that in the postseason, and he's obviously going to have a really solid payday. But we're going to see where this Kristaps Porzingis thing goes. I think that that's definitely a candidate to get moved in the offseason, just if not just by watching on the floor, but even the reports that have surfaced just over the course of the year about the pairing itself. I'm really, really looking to see what they do from the standpoint of the trade market, because the free agency market, you're not going to get a second star. Unless maybe you think about bringing in a veteran like a DeMar DeRozan or something like that. I'm not privy to what Dallas's cap situation is. I'm just throwing names out there right now. But like, I think that finding someone who it doesn't even have to be a superstar. I would say just bringing in an all-star or someone who's like a fringe all-star around Luka, and you'll be fine. Someone who can, complement his talents in the way that, can shoot the three, but can also get their own shot. I think that, Porzingis wasn't really involved in the offense. He was more of like a spot up shooter all year. We obviously read Nekias Duncan's article about how far away from the basket he was in the post and not making much of a budge there in the post, no matter who was guarding him. So, they're probably going to bring Tim Hardaway back, but I think they need, somebody else, and maybe they can find somebody, a taker for that Porzingis contract. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the big question. What happens with Porzingis? Who can they put around Luka? What happens with Hardaway Jr.? That's kind of the big question mark there. And yeah, I
also think that they need to address the center position as well. That was a carousel all year, so that's another part. That
was one thing that we heard before the trade deadline too, that they were talking about a number of different centers too. So I feel like they recognize that as well. So it'll be interesting to see what moves are made. It's just crazy to me. Like, again, 23 years in Dallas. He was Mark Cuban's right hand man. He helped build that, 2011 championship team. The guy that drafted Dirk Nowitzki and traded for Luka Doncic and made all these different moves over the years. It's just wild to think that they parted ways. So we'll see what happens with this Dallas situation. Ethan, do you have anything you want to add on the Mavericks before we move on?
Yeah, kind of a similar thought to you, just that it's crazy the amount of, like, what a seismic shift this is for the organization. I think in the article, and you just talked about it too, it was noted Cuban kind of likes the longevity. I mean, Carlisle's been around for quite a while in Dallas. So just for it to be such an abrupt move for a guy who has been around forever and really has kind of helped make Dallas kind of the franchise that it is with Dirk Nowitzki and now Luka Doncic, it's pretty surprising. And then Yeah, just to Spencer's point, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do in the offseason, because I think Hardaway is going to command some kind of money because he had a pretty good year outside of Luka Doncic. So it'll be interesting what he looks for and just kind of what cap space is available for them. And then I guess if there isn't that much, then I guess you do have to go to the trade market.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We also had two coaches that parted ways with their organization today. Scott Brooks and the Washington Wizards. His contract expired when the playoffs ended, or whenever the Wizards were eliminated from the playoffs. So, and they could not agree to an extension or a new deal. So he is now available, and the Wizards are in the searching for a new coach. And then you also had the Pelicans fire Stan Van Gundy after just 1 year. The Van Gundy one was a bigger surprise to me. I think there had been some talk about, seeing Scott Brooks move on potentially. He had 5 years there. They made the playoffs 3 years, but they really weren't able to win a ton of games. And that was something that we had heard a little bit about. Van Gundy's interesting because he was only there for 1 season. David Griffin handpicked him last year, and there had been some rumblings. There was Sam Amick from The Athletic reported that players weren't vibing with Van Gundy, and there was some issues there. And then now, of course, once the decision was made, you saw some other reports coming out that Van Gundy and Brandon Ingram had a strained relationship, that the players were tuning him out. Eric Bledsoe was another one of the guys that were apparently tuning him out. So we're kind of hearing some of the reasoning now. And it was a disappointing year for the Pelicans. I think they expected to be more competitive than they were. They were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So I think that was kind of part of it. But the Van Gundy one was more surprising to me, just given how long he was there. Only 1 year. Now, selfishly, I hope we get to see Stan Van Gundy go back to broadcasting. I thought he was amazing in the bubble when he was doing color commentary. So, obviously we'll see what happens. He's bounced around a bit now, and it's possible he gets another coaching opportunity, but I hope we see him back in broadcasting. Spencer, what were your thoughts on the Van Gundy and Brooks news?
The first thing that came to my mind was Zion's going to be on his third coach.
In 3 years.
Yeah,
in 3 years. And that's something that I've seen here in Cleveland with Colin Sexton, right? Now, sometimes the talent just supersedes, what a coaching staff's able to do. But even if you look at Brandon Ingram, think about how many head coaches that he's gone through. From what I've read on the Stan Van Gundy situation, a lot of it was based on him basically leaning towards those veteran players. So that's what's kind of ironic about Eric Bledsoe not connecting with him, because Stan Van Gundy played Eric Bledsoe quite a bit. That team didn't space the floor nearly enough. Defensively, they didn't get on the same page. This is kind of more to a broader point, but it's just amazing to me how quick of a trigger these general managers and organizations are having with these head coaches now. Just getting rid of them after a year if something doesn't work. Now, sometimes it has to be the right decision, but at another time, you got to think about longevity. You got to think about continuity. And sometimes it takes some time. And, the Pelicans clearly could have improved that roster. So to, put it on Stan, and if the players weren't connecting, I understand it. I mean, you look at what happened in Atlanta this year with Lloyd Pierce. They turned it around and brought in Nate McMillan as the interim, and boom, look what he's done. So there's a chance that this could be, the right decision, but it's just wild to me that these coaches are getting 1-2 years max now because of the demand for the immediacy. And it's just, it's wild to me.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, especially because, you talk about there's certain organizations, Miami, Dallas, San Antonio, where it has been more of a long-term approach and you have a long time. But like Ethan said, that's why it was surprising to see the Donnie Nelson thing, because they were one of those organizations that didn't just make these kind of moves very quickly. So, but I think part of it is a lot of times whenever we see coaches get fired, the players now have so much power that if they don't like the guy or they feel like, hey, he's not the answer. Or I think Brandon Ingram even had some on the record quotes of like, well, he coaches differently than anyone I've ever been around, and we have very different styles. Like, he was even kind of saying some things on the record that were hinting at, hey, this isn't what I'm used to. I'm not crazy about it. He's very, and
Stan's a loud guy.
And very demanding. His training camps and practices were known for being very hard. JJ Redick had the comment that he was like dreading when Van Gundy got hired because he had to go through a training camp with Stan again. So like, he's very demanding. And I think that maybe today some players don't like that. And we don't see that as often today with coaches in the NBA. But yeah, I think it's tough because I've had did an article years ago about this, where why do some franchises take that approach and have that longevity and, you know, give coaches a long leash essentially, and other organizations don't. And I think part of it is executives who don't have a ton of job security or who are looking over their own shoulder tend to get overly involved and tweak things and change coaches because they want to be clear, look, I'm doing everything I can to try to improve the team. And if they don't make those kind of moves, it's possible they could be let go as well. So I'm not saying that's the case here, but I think that tends to happen. And then I also think, there's certain organizations where they just don't have. If it's one thing if you've won championships, like the thing that Rick Carlisle, Greg Popovich, and Eric Spoelstra all have in common is they've won championships with their organization. So that buys you a ton more time. And that's, again, why the Donnie Nelson thing was surprising, because he won that franchise's only championship there and helped build that team. So I think that does buy you more time. But when you're someone like Stan or Scott Brooks or some of these coaches, it's tougher when you haven't, taking the team to that level and expecting a long period of time. But yeah, to see it happen after just 1 year was very surprising in the case of Stan, especially because I think it's funny. He signed a multi-year agreement as a broadcaster a year ago and then left, and then signed a multi-year deal with the Pelicans and then left.
Does he get paid from both jobs now? Is
I don't know.
Going to be living large?
He's the king of signing these multi-year deals, and then after 1 year, something happens. Either he takes another job or gets let go. But yeah, I mean, fortunately, with both Scott Brooks and Stan, they're both going to have plenty of options. I think Scott Brooks is maybe the nicest person on this planet, and everyone loves him. So I don't think he's going to have a hard time finding any work. And Stan, not only is he respected as a coach, but amazing broadcaster again. So he's going to have opportunities there too. Ethan, what were your thoughts on the coaching moves today?
Yeah, I think going back to something Spencer said, just about the continuity in general, it's really interesting what different young teams do. And you talked about Colin Sexton and the Cavs. The Timberwolves are a great example with Karl-Anthony Towns and how they've cycled through coaches. The Kings for a long time did a similar thing, although it seems like they've kind of, hopefully I didn't jinx him, but they have stuck with Luke Walton right now. And then just Stan Van Gundy being the second first-year coach to be let go. Nate Bjorkgren just had it with the Pacers after Nate McMillan had a pretty long run there. So that's interesting. That's an example, I guess, of a franchise shift in mentality maybe. And I know there were a lot of reports, at least, of circumstances there that went on, but it is interesting. I understand it because Van Gundy was brought in as kind of a defense first, like get them to really play discipline on defense, and that just didn't happen, even though you did have guys like Eric Bledsoe and Lonzo Ball. But again, it was like Spencer said, a lot of the pieces didn't really look like they fit on paper, and then they didn't really end up fitting that well on the court. So hopefully they don't need to make any kind of roster overhauls, but some kind of moves that just help the young core at least make a little bit more sense together, I think would be nice. And then just on Scott Brooks, I thought that was really interesting because it seemed like he almost played his way back into kind of keeping his position with the Wizards, with the way that they hustled back into the playoffs. And they were really a fun team to watch towards the end of the year. Bradley Beal wants to stay there by all accounts. That was an interesting move. And I wonder how much Beal and Westbrook will kind of get their say in what happens next with the coaching position.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one thing too here with this Pelicans thing. I'm also thinking now, is David Griffin going to be trying to find someone who's going to take a Steven Adams or an Eric Bledsoe or any of those veterans? Because initial thoughts are they're probably going to try and find time for Kyra Lewis Jr. They're going to try and find time for Nikhil Alexander Walker, Najee Marshall, someone who came up out of nowhere and played a really, really solid year for them when they had some injuries. So that's the other thought that comes to my head. And then I did see that Mark Stein reported that Teresa Weatherspoon's going to get consideration for that job. So very interesting and looking forward to following that storyline.
One thing that Drew Olenoff from TechCrunch just tweeted at us, he's watching this right now. He said the short coaching term is because of rookie deals. You have to pair a young star with who they respond to the best. Otherwise, they're gone. And he's okay with that, he said. So I think he brings up a good point now, especially in today's player movement era where so many guys, I mean, look at the article comes out about the Mavericks and the dysfunction there. And everyone wants to say, oh, Luka's going to leave, even though he just said he's going to sign the rookie extension. Everyone's quick to mention where these, when these stars are going to leave and oh, this guy's going to be on the market next. And
they're talking about it as soon as they get drafted these days.
Right. Yeah. Like Zion, you saw that with Zion. Oh, is he going to stay in New Orleans long? John Morant, he starts looking like a star. Does he really want to be in a small market? You hear it all the time. So I think that is part of it. And I think, a lot of these guys do change teams. So you do have a smaller window to keep these guys happy. So maybe it is partially trying to show these guys, hey, we're looking to do everything we possibly can to make you a winner and surround you with talent here, not only on the court, but also on the sideline. That could be part of it too. So maybe that is a shift in some of the thinking of organizations, and especially when you're talking about a Zion or a Luka or some of these generational talents, like, we don't know how long the window is going to be. Like, they're already one of the best players in the NBA, and you can't just keep saying, oh, well, we'll be a winner in 2-3 years from now, 4 years from now. Like, I think you really, especially when they're on the rookie deal, and I think that's what Drew is getting at, they're a bargain. They're one of the biggest bargains in the NBA. So this is your chance to really surround them with talent and bring in the right coach and things like that. So he brings up a good point. I think there is something to be said there.
I think that's a really good point. Just having them on the rookie deal and having the ability to make moves and kind of position the team around them while they're on that contract, where you just have like the space to make those moves, is, I guess, really important that you take advantage of that before they're on the $202 million or whatever that Luka's going to be making soon, which is awesome for him. But it does, like, it really kind of puts you in a bind as a GM or as a coach with what you want to make happen as far as roster decisions.
And you're seeing it right now with Giannis and Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. Like, that's a perfect example, because now those books are.
Yeah, it's like in the NFL too. Like, you see the best time for some of these organizations to win Super Bowls is when you have your quarterback on a rookie deal, whether it's Mahomes or Russell Wilson or
Baker Mayfield.
You go all in when you have a young QB that's not making tons of money before they get that ridiculous contract, the Andrew Luck contract that makes it really hard to put talent around them. It's kind of the same thing when you have a young star in the NBA. So I'm glad they brought that point up. I want to add in Clips here, who's part of our staff at basketballnews.com. Clips, buddy. First of all, I'm sorry. This Kawhi Leonard news is rough. We've been just kind of going around the league and reacting to different things. I think we covered everything except for the LaMelo Ball Rookie of the Year. We'll get to that in a second. But because you just joined in, we have to ask you about the Kawhi news. What was your reaction to that?
Oh, I'm devastated, man. I'm devastated. And it's wild, too, because, I mean, you guys were all watching the game. Obviously, something happened with the knee. Kawhi, after the game, was perfectly fine. Said, dude, I'm all right. I'll play tomorrow.
Didn't he stay in the game too? He stayed in.
He played another like 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then Farbod, one of the beat writers, last night was like, hey, good news, Clipper Nation. Kawhi will be playing in Game 5. And then I wake up this morning, and then there's a sprained knee, and then it's turned into ACL. And now it's just I have absolutely no idea what to believe, right? But this is devastating for us. And I don't think it's the shortened season. I don't think it's anything like, I mean, if we want to make excuses, if we want to say it's a Clipper curse or like a lot of Clipper Nation saying right now, but this is devastating. But there is silver lining. I still think we can win this series. And this is a huge, huge opportunity for Paul George to completely rewrite the legacy and his own narrative right now to shut everybody up, right? And it starts with one game. I need tonight's game for Paul George to just show up and show out. And I hope he can do that, man. I think we still are deep enough to beat this Utah team. We've played them 4 times. We know the tendencies. We know what they're going to be doing. The only difference is we're not going to have Kawhi.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So Nekias Duncan wrote an article today, or he participated in an article that we did as a staff, where he said that he still thinks the Clippers can win this, and that Paul George had been the best player in the series, not Kawhi. So he was arguing that, PG was, if not better, at least equal to what Kawhi was kind of bringing to the table. So yeah, if you're Paul George, you had the whole playoff P comment. Everyone joked about it afterwards. Like, this is his moment to kind of put all that pandemic P stuff to the side and show, no, I can lead my own team. And it's crazy because we kind of saw the same narrative with Kevin Durant a few nights ago. Whenever James Harden and Kyrie Irving came out, it was like, okay, well, everyone said you've been on these super teams, you've had help around you. Show us what you can do. Show us step up and lead the team to victory. And then sure enough, he goes and has 49, 17, 10, 3, and 2. So if Paul George can rise to the occasion and win this game for the Clippers, maybe it isn't that serious. Maybe Kawhi, if they're able to get past Utah, maybe he could come back in the Western Conference Finals. We don't know the severity yet. I think people hear ACL and they freak out and think, oh, he's going to be out part of next year too. There's been some people assuming the worst, but we don't really know anything yet. So you really got to just focus on tonight's game. You're right.
Well, look, man, we know what it's like to play without Kawhi. We've played without him many times.
Yeah.
I said on our last show going into Game 4 that, it doesn't. I want Paul George to just embrace being the villain. It doesn't matter what you do. You will always, every telecast they bring up the bubble and they bring up playoff P. One comment this guy made 3 years ago in a post-game interview has stuck with him forever. It reminds me a lot of like, why do you hate LeBron James? Oh, well, the decision. I hate LeBron James because of the decision, right? Oh, and I hate Paul George because, playoff P, stuff like that. I do think we're talented enough. I was thinking this morning when I heard it was like a sprain, I was thinking, okay, well, I'd rather have Kawhi game 7 than game 5, right? So if we could get him back by game 7, that's all that really matters. We just need to win one of these next games, Look, man, Paul George is extremely talented, and he can lead our team. And we are so deep. The way Reggie's been playing, it's all going to come down to our Luke Kennard, Reggie, and Marcus Morris. These are 3 guys that just need to knock down their shots. I think Ty Lue is smart enough to realize we have to get Favors in the game. We have to get Rudy out of the game, get him in foul trouble, and Favors is lunch meat for everybody on our team. And I like Derek Favors. But now it's the chess game of coaching and making sure we have the right matchups. And they're not as healthy. I mean, they don't have Conley, and Spider isn't 100% either. He's one more crash and fall away from tearing that ankle and being out of the series. So what are your guys' take? Do you think the Clippers have enough to win tonight or one of the next 2 games?
One of the next 2, yes. One of the next 2, I would say. So, I've been texting you throughout this series and talking about Marcus Morris. This is his time. This is his time to really step up and be that 2 or 3 option. I mean, you obviously talk about Reggie Jackson and the amazing stuff that he's been doing, just shooting the heck out of the ball and getting into the paint. But I'm looking forward to seeing Terrence Mann get some more minutes. Just because Pat Bev? Pat Bev, yes. You mentioned Kennard. Kennard looked pretty solid, shooting the basketball the last few games. So I think they have enough. And you hit the nail on the head. It's not like Utah doesn't have their own injury issues right now. And they're clearly suffering from not having someone making plays for them. They're going a lot of, pull up jumpers. Look at the first half of game 4, the way that Donovan Mitchell was just pulling up from 3 the whole time. Now he made them a lot in the second half. And, Joe Ingles got going and so did Bogey, but these were, well defended shots and they were making Utah earn them. So, they don't have the penetration that they usually have unless Donovan has the ball and he's going into someone out of control at the moment. So I think the Clippers have enough to win one of the next 2 games. I don't know if it's tonight though, because, going on the road in Utah, it's tough. It's real tough. Yeah. So we'll find out, but both teams are, hobbled in their own right. And we'll see, who's the last men standing.
This is where the Clippers, forward depth, though, is so important. They're pretty deep there. And I think I'm a big Terrence Mann fan. I think this is a chance for him to step up and make a big impact on the series. And then, it really comes down to Paul George and then the other forwards that'll be stepping in. I do think that the Clippers, and this is something that Nikias mentioned in that article that I talked about. We kind of did an article today recapping all the crazy news stories from today and reacting to them. And he pointed out that the Clippers still have the personnel to switch and trap the way they have been. They can still play small. The things that have been working well for them, they can still do them. Now, granted, it sucks to do them without Kawhi because he's that good of a player. We all know that, but they don't have to shift things too much from the game plan that they've come up with. And look, you mentioned it, Clips. Ty Lue's done a fantastic job this postseason of kind of making adjustments. And everyone wrote them off in the Dallas series and said, oh, it's over. They have no shot. And then and you came on one of our live streams and you said, no, this isn't over. They're fine, blah, blah, blah. So people wrote them off then. Ty made some amazing adjustments and look what happened. So I do think they can still win this series. I think it's going to be a very competitive series the rest of the way. I'm not saying, oh, Clippers are going to dominate and easily win, or the Jazz are going to destroy them. I think it's going to be very close, go down to 7 games and be very, very interesting. My question is, my hope is they can, if they do win the series, that Kawhi could come back next round and it's not a severe injury. That's obviously the hope, but we'll see.
Look, man, winning this series would mean so much to Clipper fans no matter what. It'd be the farthest we've ever gone as a franchise, right? And if Paul George is the guy that's going to lead us there, then so be it. And that'll be huge for us as an organization. Now, could we beat Phoenix without Kawhi? I think we could beat Phoenix too without Kawhi. It'd be extremely difficult, right? Anything's going to be difficult from here on out without Kawhi. Everything. So, but again, they're going through their own thing. Like if Chris Paul literally has COVID, that means he's out for 14 days. If this series ends on Friday, right? Like they're going to be without Chris Paul for maybe the first 2 games, right?
Yeah.
Either way, now I'll bet you Phoenix wants this to go 7 games.
Absolutely.
No question.
Yeah.
They definitely do. But look, really quick, the slogan for the Clippers all year has always been "Next man up." That's all Ty Lue preaches.
That is the Ty thing, man. I can tell you that firsthand. That is a Ty staple.
And you know,
Ty staple.
And there's no stressing with us either. Ty's demeanor the whole time, like obviously this is going to be difficult, but it's not like panic. Ty doesn't panic. It's like, okay, well, we still got Paul George, and Pat Bev is going to have to lead us on defense. And Marcus, you're going to have to hit shots. He's horrific in Utah, right? Like he shot horrifically in Utah. And we're going to need them. We might even need to see Boogie again, right? To just bang up Rudy a little more.
In 7 or 8 minutes.
I totally agree.
You know, like, yeah.
Now, when Boogie got 11 in game 2 is when everything messed up, right? Everything was completely messed up. Yeah. Game one, he got like 5 minutes, right? And then we took him all the way to 11, and it was horrible. So just pray for me, guys, because look, this is so hard for Clipper Nation. We deal with this so much, man, and it's so sad to see because we're finally clicking, man. And we match up against everybody that's ahead of us. Give me Milwaukee, please. We will tear apart Milwaukee right now. I think we match up well against Phoenix, right? I think Utah is the hardest team to beat right now in the West. So just pray for me, man, because I can't do this any longer. I'm getting way too old for this, man. Way too old. And the fact that, like, last night everything was cool. Kawhi's playing game 5, and now he's got a torn ACL. Like, where does this happen?
That's the crazy thing. Like he played on it for, like you said, a few minutes, and then it felt like a precautionary thing. And then, like you said, there were reports coming out, oh, he's going to be fine. So yeah, I'm curious what happened behind the scenes. Like, what was the shift where they realized, oh, this is much more severe than we thought? It could be ACL. Like something changed. Something happened behind the scenes.
Obviously, an MRI something had to have happened. First of all,
but if there was the MRI, we'd have the actual results, and they'd have some details right now. It wouldn't just be fearing it. So I'm curious what happened.
And Kawhi wasn't even icing his knees after the game. He walked out of the game perfectly fine and didn't even ice in the locker room. Like I also, like, my prayer is that this is just one big brain F for Ty Lue, just trying to screw with Utah right now. Like, haha, Kawhi's playing game 6. You know what I mean? That's what I'm praying for, but I don't think that's the case. I want to hear what the Clippers come out with, though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want the Clippers to come out. I don't want Sham to break it. I want the Clippers to come out and say, "This is
that's what I'm waiting for." I'm waiting for. Hey, he had the MRI.
There's no official news yet.
There's no official diagnosis.
Wow.
Literally,
I think they said they're waiting for the swelling to go down in his leg to do the MRI.
Okay. Yeah, because the last thing that came out was Shams hours ago saying they fear ACL, and that's the last thing we heard. So that's what I'm saying. Usually by now you'd have results and timetable and all that. We haven't heard anything. So.
Wow.
We'll see. I'm guessing Ethan, you mentioned the swelling. That's probably what changed. They probably saw crazy swelling from, today versus last night. And they're like, oh, wait a second. Maybe something happened here. Maybe we were up, maybe we misdiagnosed this. I don't know.
I think there's one more silver lining in this for me. Again, over the years of being heartbroken and just torn to pieces by the Clippers, I always try to find silver lining. And the silver lining in this for me is if Kawhi cannot finish this series or any series after this, I think there's a very high probability that Kawhi will re-sign with us again, because that's what's going to happen this summer. I think he was going to re-sign anyways, but I think this will just give him more, more purpose to sign with us again for unfinished business.
See the team at full strength, see what they can do. I hear you. That makes sense.
A lot of guys are going to fall into that category this year.
Who else are you thinking?
No, just unfinished business for everybody that got hurt.
Yeah, the injuries have been crazy. We were talking about that before you jumped on clips. Like every team is dealing with something. You've had 8 or 9 stars, all-star players go down. It's been wild.
And then LeBron takes pretty much credit for it, right? LeBron comes out with his tweet saying, "I told you so. I told you this was going to happen." And look, man.
In fairness, though, he did say there was the rumor that he was going to sit out all of December and not come back. Like he was one of the people saying early on that this was a mistake. So I will give him credit for that.
No, I get that, but also like these athletes are getting bigger and stronger, and these moves that we're making, these Euro steps and all these things that these guys are doing take a lot of strain on the knees. I mean, COVID didn't help at all, but yeah, man, it's horrible. I mean, who wants to see the Jazz and Bucks in the finals, guys? That's what the NBA gets for starting early. Like, you're going to get the Jazz and the Bucks in the finals. That's no fun. See how much money that makes.
Clips is frustrated. You can tell.
I'll get out of here. I'll get out of here, guys. You guys keep talking about what you want to talk about.
Wait, we appreciate you jumping on and giving us some Clippers talk there. Good luck tonight. Hopefully your boys can get it done. And
Spencer, I'm sorry I haven't been responding to you. I don't like talking during Clipper games. It's really difficult. My dad called me at halftime the other night, and I had to be like, Pops, there are protocols to this, okay? You better be having a heart attack right now because I don't pick up the phone.
Oh, my God.
Anyways, I'll talk to you guys soon, all right?
All right,
sounds
take care.
good
luck. Really quick, before we wrap up, I do want to thank our sponsor for this stream, BetQL. If you want an advantage over the sports books during the NBA playoffs, how about an inside edge during this MLB season? You need to download BetQL, the only app you'll need to make smart bets. Their best bets algorithm scans over 350,000 bets per year to give you a best bet recommendation for every game across all major sports. And they also give you the reasoning behind why you should place the bet. BetQL also has tons of other tools like sharp data, so you can see who the pros are backing and line movement, so you can jump on betting opportunities in real time. Plus, you can save all your picks in one place to track your success and your winning streaks, as well as view your ranking on their leaderboards. Head to the App Store or Google Play Store now to download BetQL. Enter the discount code TOPSHOT or BBN30. Actually, yeah, BBN30 is the best one at payment checkout for a 30% off any of their subscription offerings. They also have some deals right now because the playoffs are going on, but go to the payment area and then enter the discount code BBN30 for 30% off their subscription offerings. Don't miss out on the chance to beat your sportsbook this summer. Thanks, BetQL. Appreciate it. Anything else? Again, yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's plenty of different codes you can use. You can use BBN Stream, which is up on screen over there. You can use BBN30. You can use Top Shot. They're sponsoring a number of our shows right now. So try all the codes. They all work. Anything else you guys want to touch on from this crazy day in the NBA before we jump off?
LaMelo.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. So LaMelo Ball, there's no official announcement yet, but according to Woj, he's going to be Rookie of the Year. Now, I think this isn't a huge surprise. I think he was a lock for most of the year until the wrist injury. And then obviously that allowed Anthony Davis to come back Anthony Edwards to kind of come back in the race and compete with him. Anthony Davis, not this year's Rookie of the Year, surprisingly. So yeah, I think it kind of became a two-man race at that point between LaMelo and Edwards. Edwards got so much better as the year went on and really started scoring better. I know. Let's talk about this, Spencer, because you wrote an article saying that Edwards was your Rookie of the Year. You got a lot of heat for it. LaMelo fans were not happy. Now that we know LaMelo is likely winning the award, and I think also it helped LaMelo, he was able to come back at the end of the year, come back from the wrist injury and kind of continue to play well and solidify himself as Rookie of the Year. That helped. Had he been out the entire time and finished his season in March, that would have been much different. And, people may have voted differently because he wouldn't have played many games. But the fact that he was able to come back helped him. What do you feel like this was the right choice, Spencer?
I think so, just because of the way that he came back. Now, when I wrote that article, I wasn't aware that LaMelo would be returning so quickly. I thought that was close to a season-ending injury, if not. What did he have? Like 10 games at the end of the year that they added onto the ledger. So
yeah,
I didn't know if he was going to make to the minimum. And that was literally the basis behind the article, was Anthony Edwards has played more games. I even put their stats next to each other. At the time it was like their last 25 games, and the stats were very comparable. I also took into effect, and I mean, is this a crappy reason for something to work against you? Yes, but the Hornets, even without LaMelo, were winning. They had guys like Gordon Hayward until he went down with injury. Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, PJ Washington had a bunch of random 40-point games. So, I took that into effect as well, because Anthony Edwards, even though he wasn't quite as efficient at the beginning of the year, he did improve later on. And also he was willing to let those things fire. He was shooting away, taking double-digit three-pointers, attacking the basket, making really solid plays too. I know that LaMelo is bar none a very, very future all-star talent. You know, nothing taken away from him for writing that article the way that people received it, because that's how society is now. If you like someone, then you have to hate the other person. But no, that's this. You know, congrats to LaMelo. I mean, well deserved. He really filled the stat sheet every night. I think defensively he was you know, a pleasant surprise just in the fact that he was putting an effort in that end. Sometimes he was a little confused and his awareness was a little off, but that's going to be, you know, any rookie. And the same goes for Anthony Edwards defensively. He was having his troubles. So that's just a rookie thing. But as far as the, you know, the tool bag goes, they're just, you know, two different players. LaMelo is more of your, you know, ball handling forward type, whereas Anthony Edwards is very in your face. So, you know, it really, I didn't see how the votes came out, and it's probably going to come out when the official announcement is made. But I think that you couldn't pick a wrong one here in this case, you know, and even with Tyrese Halliburton doing what he was doing in the first few months, you know, he was giving them a little bit of a push, but obviously that injury at the end of the year, you know, really hurt his case. But I think that there was no way to go wrong here. And, you know, congrats to LaMelo.
Yeah, one thing I will say, you mentioned Anthony Edwards just putting a bunch of shots. I think in the beginning of the year, we saw he was very inefficient. He was shooting 34, or I'm sorry, here, let me grab this. Before the All-Star break, he was shooting 37% from the field, 30% from three. He was attempting 14.9 shots per game, 6.33. So he was putting up a lot of shots and was very inefficient. As the year went on, after the All-Star break, he did improve his efficiency quite a bit. He went from averaging 14.9 points per game to 23.8, and then he was shooting 45.4% from the field, 35% from three. And so, I mean, even though he was attempting significantly more shots, you know, after the All-Star break, he's putting up 19 attempts per game, 8.2 threes per game, and was putting up much better shooting numbers. So we saw his efficiency improve in addition to his scoring. That was helpful.
He also picked the biggest stages to do those things. Like he had some excellent games against top competition. Against the Lakers, for example, he had a really solid game. I think against the Warriors, he showed up really solid. So again, there was no slight whatsoever to LaMelo when I wrote that article. It was more about what Anthony Edwards was doing and the fact that I didn't know that LaMelo would be coming back as soon as he did. And thankfully he did, because no one wants to see someone of that caliber talent be out.
Right. And LaMelo, he was incredible. In February, he averaged 20.1 points, 6.7 assists, and 6.2 rebounds. That was, I mean, he was playing really well. Then he gets injured in March, was able to come back, and his averages for the season were 15.7 points, 6.1 assists, 5.9 rebounds, 1.6 steals, and he shot 43.6% from the field and 35.2% from three. So just an incredible season for both of those guys. They both have so much potential. I think you're going to see LaMelo Ball become a perennial all-star, superstar type player. Edwards has that kind of potential too. His upside is there. You know, we'll see if he can improve defensively, as you mentioned, and become a bit more efficient, but he's a great scorer, and we saw that in the second half. So
youngest guy in the class. Youngest guy in the class.
Super young. Ethan, what were your thoughts on kind of LaMelo's season and what we saw as far as Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, just agreeing with you guys, it is really close. I don't think there's a wrong choice. I think I'd lean, maybe by the slightest edge, I'd lean LaMelo just because, yes, there's a situation where he's playing with better teammates and the team as a whole was kind of more cohesive, but he also was playing really well on a team that did have genuine playoff aspirations. The Wolves kind of fell out of the bottom early. And then, like, a lot of it became player development focused. And LaMelo took a starting point guard role. Like, he didn't have that in the beginning of the year. He earned that role and succeeded in it when he was healthy. So I think I'd give him credit for that. But either way, like, Anthony Edwards being a 19, 20 point per game scorer in his rookie year is pretty unheard of for a lot of rookies. Even some of the better scorers we know now struggled their rookie year with just general, like, being able to put up points. So credit to him. And then I guess my last point, just in general, a credit to this entire rookie class. I think got a lot of negativity in the extended offseason, and I think that negativity piled on by the draft about like this being kind of a weak class. Maybe it has some depth, but not a lot of star power. And there are so many extremely talented players, like Tyrese Halliburton. Isn't probably quite in the Rookie of the Year conversation by the end, but he was rock solid for the Kings. throughout the entire year, and a bunch of potential role players. I mean, just from a Celtics perspective, Peyton Pritchard outperformed my expectations in his rookie year, and Aaron Nesmith came along too. I think a lot of teams are going to be really happy, even if they don't get a surefire star. I think many teams got a player that you can plug into your rotation long term, which is great.
Yep. I look at Detroit in that aspect, just as far as Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes. We didn't even see really what he was capable of because of the injury plagued season, and also, you know, just towards the end of the year, he wasn't getting quite as much playing time. But I love what Detroit's doing.
Yeah, there were so many guys that, you know, you didn't really expect a whole lot. There was a lot of talk about this is a weak class. And then, you know, for Edwards and LaMelo to play that well, for, you know, other guys, you mentioned Tyrese, Cole Anthony, Isaiah Stewart. There were so many guys that stepped up and just started really shining. And then guys like we saw Obi Toppin play better in the playoffs. And
RJ Hampton, the guy that you interviewed.
Yeah, it's funny because I asked Hampton about it, and he was saying like they always found it funny that, you know, people were criticizing this class, and he said he couldn't, you know, everyone disagreed in the class, and they talked about it amongst themselves and said they wanted to prove everyone wrong. And he pointed out you have someone like James Wiseman who, you know, was injured and didn't really get a chance to show what he can do, but he's another guy that 2-3 years from now could become a special player. And Spencer, you just wrote a great article about how it takes big men longer to develop in the NBA typically. So who knows what Wiseman becomes 3-4 years from now. If he's another guy, another star level player that you can add on to this list, then you're talking about a class that everyone kind of mocked and said wasn't very strong, that could have several, you know, star level players and a ton of guys that are role players and contributing for a long time in the NBA.
Absolutely. And cheap plug, Cody Toppert, assistant for Memphis, gave me some great stuff on James and you know why it didn't quite work out the way that James's first season did in Golden State, but has plenty of hope for him. And you know, maybe they can use DeAndre Ayton as a model, you know, someone who is doing what he's doing for Phoenix in the playoffs this year, someone who also worked with Cody. So
yeah, Top was a Phoenix Suns assistant coach before going to Memphis, so he's the perfect guy to talk to about big man development. But yeah, check that article out. Check out basketballnews.com in general. We have so many exclusive articles, new articles going up every single day. We have all the latest breaking news. So if you want to know what's going on days like today, where there's crazy things happening left and right, check out Basketball News. Ethan here does an amazing job of updating our news desk. So if you go to the site, there's headlines everywhere. You're not going to miss anything, whether there's rumors or, you know, announcements like we saw today. All of it's on basketballnews.com. We also have 11 podcasts that are part of our network. So there's a little bit of something for everyone. So check out basketballnews.com. And thanks again to BetQL for sponsoring this. And we appreciate everyone for hanging out with us. Thanks everyone.